In the underworld of high-stakes finance, a signature is worth more than a life. On a rainy Tuesday in October 2023, Dante Casero, the acting head of the New York crime syndicate, was 3 seconds away from signing away $150 million for a stack of fraudulent Italian bearer bonds. The FBI didn't stop him. His bodyguards didn't notice. The man who saved the most dangerous predator in the city was a 24-year-old waitress named Sophia, who was just trying to refill his water. She leaned in, looked at the document, and whispered 5 words in a dialect so rare only 3 people in that room understood it. Those 5 words didn't just save a fortune, they started a war. This is the story of the waitress who knew too much. To understand how close Dante Casero came to losing everything, you have to understand the setting. This wasn't a back alley deal. This was happening at the Obsidian Room, a members-only steakhouse in Tribeca, where the cheapest bottle of wine costs more than a Honda Civic. It was October 14th. The humidity in New York was stifling, but inside the air was conditioned to a crisp 68 degrees. Dante Casero sat at the corner booth. Table 9, the one with the direct view of the entrance and the kitchen, strategically chosen for security. Dante isn't your grandfather's mob boss. He doesn't wear tracksuits. He wears bespoke Tom Ford, holds an MBA from Wharton, and runs Casero Logistics, a shipping empire that moves legitimate cargo by day and launderers the syndicate's cash flow by night. He is 34, ruthless, and terrifyingly intelligent. Sitting across from him was a man named Silas Vane. Silas Vane was a ghost in the banking world. He was a broker for the gray market, old money aristocrats trying to liquidate assets without alerting tax authorities. Vane was polished, silver-haired, and oozing the kind of confidence that comes from never having been punched in the face. "The bonds are authenticated, Mr. Casero," Vane said, sliding a heavy leather portfolio across the mahogany table issued by the Banco de Sicilia in 1947. "Bearer bonds Reconstruction era. Whoever holds the paper owns the gold. $150 million payable upon presentation in Zurich." Dante didn't touch the papers yet. He took a sip of his Pen Noir. He was looking for a way to park a massive influx of cash before a federal audit hit his logistics firm. These bonds were the perfect vehicle, portable, untraceable, and historically valuable. "My team has reviewed the digital scans," Dante said, his voice a low baritone that barely carried over the clatter of silverware. "But I want to see the physical watermarks." Naturally, Vane opened the portfolio. Inside lay 3 sheets of parchment, yellowed with age, covered in intricate Italian calligraphy and official stamps. They smelled like dust and old money. To the untrained eye, they were masterpieces. To Dante, who had grown up speaking Italian with his grandmother, they looked legitimate. Enter Sophia. Sophia, last name withheld from the employee roster for safety reasons, though she went by Ritchie on her tax forms, was invisible. That was her superpower. She was 24 with dark hair pulled back into a severe bun and a uniform that was 2 sizes too big, deliberately hiding her figure. She kept her head down. She moved silently. She was the perfect waitress because she didn't exist. But Sophia wasn't just a waitress. She was a doctoral candidate in linguistics at Columbia University who had lost her funding 3 months prior due to a departmental scandal she had nothing to do with. She was broke, desperate, and working double shifts to pay rent in Etruria. More importantly, her thesis was on Sicilian dialects and administrative syntax of the post-war era. You literally could not have scripted a worse waitress for Silas Vane to encounter. Sophia approached table 9 with a pitcher of ice water. She knew who Dante Casero was. Everyone in the restaurant did. The staff had been briefed. Don't look him in the eye. Don't speak unless spoken to. Refill the glass before it hits the halfway mark. She moved to pour water into Dante's crystal tumbler. As she leaned in, her eyes drifted to the table. It was a reflex. She read everything. Menus, receipts, text messages on phones left face up. Her gaze landed on the center document, Certificado de Obligación Pomo 1947. She froze, the water picture hovered in midair. The text on the bond was beautiful. It was majestic, and it was impossible. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She should walk away. This was Dante Cassaro. If she embarrassed him or if she interrupted a deal, she could lose her job or worse. She knew the stories. People who annoyed the Cassaro family tended to have accidents, but Sofia had a flaw. She couldn't stand bad grammar, and she certainly couldn't stand a lie. Dante reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a fountain pen. The black resin caught the light. He uncapped it. Silas Vane was smiling, a tight, predatory smile. He was watching the pen. Dante placed the tip of the pen on the transfer line. Sofia didn't think. She acted on instinct. Questo falso, she whispered. The sound was barely audible, but in the bubble of tension around the table, it sounded like a gunshot. Dante stopped. The pen hovered millimeters from the paper. He didn't look up immediately. He just froze. Silas Vane blinked, his smile faltering. "Excuse me." Vane snapped at her, his accent clipping the vowels. "We are in a meeting. Leave us." Dante slowly lifted his head. He ignored Vane. He looked directly at the waitress. For the first time, he actually saw her. He saw the terrified brown eyes, the white knuckles gripping the water pitcher, the slight tremble in her lip. "What did you say?" Dante asked. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Sofia swallowed hard. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She realized she had just stepped off a cliff. There was no going back. "I said it's fake," she said, switching to English, her voice shaking but clear. "This document, it's a forgery." Vane laughed, a harsh barking sound. "This is absurd. Dante, your staff is drunk. Get her out of here." Dante didn't move his eyes from Sofia. "Put the water down," he commanded. She set the picture on the table with a clink. "Explain," Dante said. "You have 10 seconds." Sofia took a breath. She pointed a shaking finger at the third paragraph of the bond. "The document is dated 1947, issued in Pomo," she said, her scholar's brain taking over the fear. "The text is written in a formal bureaucratic dialect. But look here at the clause regarding the bearer's rights. It uses the phrase agaran's duty. That is a standard Italian legal phrase." So Vane scoffed. "It's a legal document." "No," Sofia said, gaining speed. "In 1947, the regional administrative documents of Sicily, specifically financial bonds issued by the Banco de Sicilia, didn't use standard Italian for that specific clause due to the separatist statutes of the time. They used the Sicilian legal vernacular. It should say pigaranti duty or use the specific Palano syntax of that year." She looked at Dante, "And there's one more thing. The ink stamp at the bottom, it says Riaion Siciliana." But in 1947, during the provisional government months before the Constitution was fully ratified in 48, the official stamp for bonds was Alto Cesariato. This document uses a stamp that wasn't created until 1952. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. Sofia realized she was sweating. "Whoever made this," she whispered, "used a Google Translate version of history. They didn't check the regional archives." Dante Cassaro turned his head slowly. He looked from the terrified waitress to the polished piece of paper. Then he looked at Silas Vane. The color had drained from Vane's face. A small bead of sweat trickled down his temple. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a man who realizes the lion has woken up. "Is she right, Silas?" Dante asked softly. "She's a waitress, Dante," Vane sputtered, standing up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "She's lying. She's probably working for the gallows. This is insane. I represent the oldest banking families in." Dante moved so fast Sophia didn't even see it happen. One moment Dante was sitting. The next he had lunged across the table. He grabbed Silas Vane by the lapels of his $30 suit and slammed him back down into the booth. The table shook. The water pitcher tipped over, spilling ice water all over the bonds. The ink on the 1947 document didn't hold. Real vintage ink binds to the fibers. This ink, modern inkjet dye, began to bleed immediately, turning the priceless bond into a purple, blurry mess. Dante looked at the bleeding ink. Then he looked at Vane. "Inkjet," Dante muttered. "You tried to sell me a $150 million lie printed on an Epson." Vane gasped for air, his eyes bulging. "Dante, please, I can explain. I was forced." Dante released him with a shove of disgust. He stood up, smoothing his jacket. He signaled to two large men standing by the bar. His security. "Detail Rocco and Leo. Take Mr. Vane to the kitchen." Dante said, his voice void of emotion. "He has a lot of explaining to do. Use the meat locker, it's soundproof." As Rocco and Leo dragged a kicking and screaming Silas Vane towards the back of the restaurant, the other diners stared, fork suspended in midair. Dante turned back to Sophia. She was hugging a tray to her chest, looking like she wanted to dissolve into the floor. Dante stepped closer to her. He towered over her. He smelled of sandalwood and gun oil. "What is your name?" he asked. "Sophia," she squeaked. "Sophia," he repeated, testing the word. "You speak the Permiano dialect perfectly. You know the history of the 1947 separatist movement, and you serve steaks for minimum wage." I'm a student," she stammered. Was a student?" Dante looked at the ruined documents, then back at her. "You just saved me $150 million, Sophia. And you humiliated a man who has been lying to me for 6 months." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and slipped it into the pocket of her apron. "Shift is over," Dante said. "Come with me." "What?" Sophia took a step back. "I can't, my manager." "I just bought the restaurant," Dante said, not breaking eye contact. "Your manager works for me now, and so do you." He turned and walked towards the exit. "Let's go, Sophia. We have to find out who hired Mr. Vane before they realize he failed." Sophia stood there, the sounds of the kitchen door slamming shut behind Silas Vane echoing in her ears. She looked at the card in her pocket. It was black with a single gold-embossed lion. She had two choices. Run out the back door and hope Dante Casero forgot she existed, unlikely, or follow the most dangerous man in New York into the rain. She took off her apron, threw it on the wet table, and followed him. The ride from the restaurant to Dante Casero's headquarters was a study in sensory deprivation. The car was a custom-armored Mercedes Maybach. The interior soundproofed so effectively that the torrential New York rain outside sounded like a distant whisper. Sophia sat on the edge of the cream leather seat, shivering. It wasn't cold, but the adrenaline crash was hitting her hard. Across from her, Dante was on his phone, speaking in rapid-fire Italian. He wasn't yelling. That was the scary part. He was issuing execution orders with the same tone one might use to order a pizza. Check his apartment. If the hard drive is encrypted, bring the whole tower and find out who Vane spoke to in the last 48 hours. I don't care if you have to bribe the carrier. Do it. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the seat. He looked at Sophia. "You're shaking," he observed. "I just watched you have a man dragged into a meat locker," Sophia replied, her voice trembling but defiant. "And now I'm in a car with a man The FBI calls the Teflon Prince. I think shaking is a rational response. Dante's lip twitched, a ghost of a smile. You raid the papers, that's good. Intelligence is useful. Fear is useful, panic is not. The car pulled into the underground garage of a glass skyscraper in Midtown, the Aurelius Tower. Dante owned the top 3 floors. They bypassed the lobby, taking a private elevator that required a retinal scan to open. When the doors slid apart, Sophia gasped. The penthouse wasn't a home. It was a fortress of glass and steel floating above the city grid. The view was breathtaking, but the atmosphere was cold. Sit. Dante pointed to a black velvet sofa in the center of the living room. He walked to a wet bar and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He brought one to her. Brandy, drink it. It stops the shaking. Sophia took the glass. She didn't drink. Am I a prisoner? That depends. Dante sat in the armchair opposite her, leaning forward, elbows on knees. The predator was back. Who are you, Sophia Ritchie? You claim to be a student. My background check, which just finished 2 minutes ago, says you don't exist before 2018. No birth certificate in New York, no social media. You popped out of thin air at 18, enrolled in Columbia, and maintained a 4.0 GPA until you were expelled 3 months ago. Sophia stiffened. I wasn't expelled. I was forced out. Semantics. Dante waved his hand. The point is you are a ghost just like Silas Vane. Which makes me wonder, was tonight a setup? Did you stage the intervention to gain my trust? Sophia slammed the glass down on the coaster. The sound echoed in the massive room. I saved you because I hate liars, she snapped, her anger overriding her fear. And I know about the bonds because my father died holding one. Dante went still. Explain. Sophia looked away towards the rainy window. My father was an archivist in Pomo. He spent his life preserving history. 10 years ago, a man came to him, an American. He wanted authentication for a stack of war bonds. My father validated them. He didn't know the man had switched the originals for forgeries after the inspection. When the buyers realized they bought fakes, they didn't go after the American. They went after the authenticator. She took a shaky breath. They burned our house down with him inside. I was 14. I escaped through the cellar window. I came to America, changed my name, and promised myself I would learn everything there was to know about document forgery so that nobody could ever lie to me again. She looked back at Dante, her eyes burning. I didn't save you for you, Mr. Casero. I saved you because Silas Vane is exactly the kind of man who killed my father. Dante studied her for a long time. The silence stretched heavy and electric. He saw the grief in her eyes, raw and unpolished. It was the one thing you couldn't fake. The man who killed your father, Dante said quietly. Do you know his name? No, just a nickname the police file mentioned. The broker. Dante's eyes narrowed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. The broker. I've heard the name. He's a myth in the underworld. A middleman who connects the cartels to the banks. He turned back to her. If Silas Vane was trying to pass off those bonds, he was likely working for the broker, which means we have a common enemy, Sophia. He extended a hand. You need protection. I need a forensic document expert who isn't on the FBI payroll. The job pays 10 zeros a week. You live here. You don't leave this building without my security team, and you help me find the broker. Sophia looked at his hand. It was a deal with the devil, but it was also a chance for revenge. She stood up and shook his hand. His grip was warm, rough, and solid. I have conditions, she said. Dante raised an eyebrow. You're in no position to negotiate, but amuse me. I want access to your archives. If we find this man, I want to be the one to translate the evidence. I want to know he's finished, done. Dante said, Welcome to the family, Sophia. The next 48 hours were a blur of caffeine, encrypted files, and the terrifying realization that Sophia was now living in the center of a criminal empire. Dante wasn't just a mob boss, he was a CEO of violence. He ran his organization like a Fortune 500 company. Morning briefings, profit and loss statements, logistics coordination. Sophia was set up in a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment, but she spent most of her time in the war room, a soundproof office filled with servers and monitors. It was Wednesday night when they got the break. Rocco, Dante's head of security, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite, walked in with a hard drive. We cracked Vane's phone. He wiped the texts, but we recovered the voice memos. Dante motioned for Sophia to put on the headphones. Listen, tell me what you hear. Sophia adjusted the headset. Dante stood behind her close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. It was distracting, but she forced herself to focus. The audio was grainy. It was a recording of a phone call Vane had made hours before the meeting at the steakhouse. The fish is on the hook, Vane's voice said. Kaiser suspects nothing. The paper is aged perfectly. Then a second voice answered. It was distorted, deep, and mechanical, but the cadence was distinct. Do not underestimate him. Casero is a wolf. If he smells the ink, you are dead. Make the exchange and get to the extraction point at Teterborough Airport. Flight 774. Sophia replayed the clip. She closed her eyes. She isolated the vowels of the distorted voice. Play it again. She whispered. She listened to the way the mystery man pronounced the word Casero. He didn't say Casero like an American. He said Casero with a slight stress on the first syllable, and the R was rolled, but softly. French, Sophia said, opening her eyes. French, Dante asked. Are you sure? Positive? Sophia typed rapidly on her keyboard, pulling up a linguistic map. He's speaking English, but the procedure around Nice or Marls, and he used the word extraction. That's military terminology. She turned to face Dante. Your mystery man isn't a banker. He's ex-military. Likely French Foreign Legion operating out of the Mediterranean coast. Dante looked at Rocco. Who do we know in Marseille who deals in high-end fraud? Rocco frowned. The Corsicans hold Marseille, but they don't usually mess with New York families. Unless they were hired, Dante finished. Sophia's fingers flew across the keyboard. Flight 774, Teterborough. If Vane was supposed to be on that flight, we can track the tail number. She hacked into the public flight registry. It took her 3 minutes here. Tail number N459, GH registered to a shell company in Delaware. Blue Heron Holdings. Dante's face went dark. Blue Heron, he cursed softly. You know it, Sophia asked. It's a holding company used by Senator Arthur Sterling, Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. He's the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. He's supposed to be the guy cracking down on money laundering. So, a U.S. senator hires a French mercenary to sell fake bonds to the Italian Mafia. Sophia summarized, her mind reeling. That sounds like a trap. Dante said, it wasn't about the money. The bonds were baked. If I had signed that deal, Sterling would have had proof I was moving illegal capital. He would have raided me the moment the money transferred. He looked at Sophia with a new intensity. It wasn't just respect anymore. It was admiration. You didn't just save me money, Sophia. You saved me from federal prison. He leaned down, placing his hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her. His face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. We have to go on the offensive, Dante said. Senator Sterling is hosting a gala Saturday night at the Metropolitan Museum, a charity fundraiser. So Sophia asked, her breath hitching. So Dante smirked. We're going. Silas Vane is missing. So Sterling doesn't know the deal failed yet. He thinks I'm ruined. I want to see the look on his face when I walk through the front door. Sophia squeaked. I can't go alone. It looks suspicious. I need a date. Someone who can blend in, who speaks 3 languages, and who can spot a liar from across the room. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was electric, sending a jolt straight to her stomach. Get ready, Sophia. You're going to need a dress. The transformation of Sophia Rich. I was methodical and expensive. Dante didn't send her to a salon. He brought the salon to the penthouse. A team of 3 stylists spent 4 hours waxing, polishing, and painting. When they were finished, Sophia stared at herself in the floor-length mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. She was wearing a custom gown of midnight blue silk that clung to her curves like a second skin with a slit that ran dangerously high up her thigh. Her hair was cascading in soft waves over one shoulder. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that probably cost more than the university library she used to study in. Perfect, a voice said from the doorway. Dante stood there wearing a tuxedo that fit him with lethal precision. He walked over to her, standing behind her reflection in the mirror. They looked like a power couple on the cover of a magazine. Dark, dangerous, and beautiful, this. He touched the diamonds at her throat. Contains a microphone. Rocco will be in the van outside listening. If you get into trouble, say the word champagne. I'm nervous, Sophia admitted. I'm a waitress, Dante. I don't know how to talk to senators. You are smarter than every person in that room, Dante whispered in her ear. Just be yourself, observe, translate, and hold my arm. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was closed to the public, transformed into a glittering ballroom. The Temple of Dender was illuminated by purple mood lighting. Waiters circulated with trays of caviar. The air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. When Dante Casero walked in with Sophia on his arm, the room went quiet. Heads turned, whispers started behind hands. Dante walked with an easy arrogance, guiding Sophia through the crowd. There he is, Dante muttered, nodding toward a group of men near the Egyptian statues. Senator Arthur Sterling was a large man with a red face and a fake smile. He was laughing loudly at a joke. Dante approached him. Senator, lovely evening. Sterling turned. For a split second, his mask slipped. Genuine shock flashed across his eyes. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Mr. Casero, Sterling stammered, recovering quickly. I didn't expect to see you here. I heard you were tied up with business. Business is booming, Dante said smoothly. I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Sophia. Sophia extended her hand. A pleasure, Senator. Sterling took her hand, his palm sweaty. Fiancée, I didn't know you were settling down, Dante. Sophia is special. Dante smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. She has an incredible eye for detail. She recently helped me avoid a very bad investment. Some counterfeit bonds from 1947. Can you imagine? Someone tried to pass them off as real. Sterling went pale. He laughed nervously. The market is full of sharks, I suppose. Indeed, Sophia added, her voice sweet. One has to be careful. You never know when a blue heron might fly into the engine. Sterling dropped her hand as if it burned him. He stared at her terrified. He knew that she knew. Excuse me, the senator muttered, I need a drink. He practically ran toward the bar. Running. Dante whispered to Sophia, good job. He's not the boss. Sophia whispered back, leaning into Dante as they began to sway to the music. Did you see his eyes? He looked at someone else. When I mentioned Blue Heron, he checked for approval. Who? Dante asked, spinning her on the dance floor. The man in the gray suit by the pillar. The one with a cane. Dante subtly looked. The man was older, distinguished, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He was watching them with cold, calculated detachment. Sophia froze. Her feet stopped moving. Sophia, Dante asked, tightening his grip on her waist. What is it? I know him. She whispered, her voice choking. Who is he? That's Professor Hale, she said, trembling. He was the dean of my department at Columbia. He's the one who accused me of plagiarism. He's the one who got me expelled and blacklisted." Dante pulled her closer, shielding her from view. "The man who ruined your life is at a senator's gala. He's not just a professor," Sophia realized. The pieces clicking together in her mind with horrifying clarity. Dante, he taught historical economics. He is the expert on post-war European finance. He didn't just hire someone to make the fake bonds, he designed them. It made sense. The specific dialect errors, the obscure stamps. It was academic work. Hale is the architect. Dante realized the broker works for him. Suddenly the music stopped, the lights flickered. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers. It was Professor Hale standing on the podium. "If I could have your attention," he looked directly at Dante and Sophia across the room. He smiled, a grandfatherly smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We have a special guest tonight," Hale said. "Mr. Dante Cassaro and his charming companion. I believe a toast is in order." He raised his glass. At that moment, Sophia felt a vibration in her purse. It was her phone. A text from an unknown number. She looked down at the screen. Text: "I know you are wearing a wire, Sophia Richai. Walk to the east exit alone or I release the video of your father's death to the press. You have 60 seconds. Sophia gasped. She looked up at Hale. He gave her a subtle nod. "Dante," she whispered. "I have to go to the bathroom." "Not now," Dante said, sensing the tension. "Something is wrong. Please," she pulled away from him. "Just I'll be right back." She couldn't tell him. If Hale had a video of her father's murder, it might show the face of the killer. It was the only lead she had. "Sophia," Dante called after her, but she was already disappearing into the crowd, moving towards the east exit, straight into the lion's den. Dante watched her go, his instinct screaming that she was walking into a trap. He touched his earpiece. "Rocco, block the east exits. Nobody leaves, and get the car. We're going to have a talk with the professor." But as Sophia pushed through the heavy doors into the dark hallway of the museum's wing, she wasn't met by Rocker. She was met by the cold barrel of a silencer pressed against her forehead. "Hello, my dear student," Professor Hale's voice came from the shadows. "You always were too smart for your own good. Time for your final exam." The barrel of the gun was cold against Sophia's skin, but her mind was burning hot. Professor Hale stood in the shadows of the Egyptian Wings Service corridor, flanked by two men in tactical gear. He looked out of place in his tuxedo, a monster disguised as a gentleman. "You should have stayed a waitress." Sophia Hale sighed, adjusting his glasses with his free hand. "You had a quiet, invisible life. Why did you have to interfere with my retirement fund?" "You killed him," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of terror and rage. "My father? You were the American who brought him the bonds. Your father was a stubborn fool," Hale sneered. "I offered him 10%. He threatened to call the carabiner. He lacked vision just like you." He motioned to his guards. "Take her to the van. We'll finish this at the warehouse." "I need to know how much," she told Cassaro. One of the guards grabbed Sophia's arm, wrenching her shoulder painfully. Sophia's mind raced. The necklace, the wire. She had to trigger the signal. But if she screamed champagne now, they would know. She had to be smarter. She had to weave it into a sentence. She looked at Hale, forcing a look of pathetic desperation. "Wait," she cried out, stumbling as the guard pulled her. "Please, Professor. I didn't tell him anything. I just wanted the money. I can help you. We can celebrate. We can drink champagne in Paris. Just let me go." Hale paused. He laughed, a dry rasping sound. "Champagne? You think you can bribe me with a fantasy? You really are pathetic." But the word was out. 3 seconds later, the heavy metal service door at the end of the corridor exploded inward. It wasn't a kick. It was a breach charge. The metal warped and flew off its hinges with a deafening boom. Smoke filled the narrow hallway. Through the haze, Dante Casero emerged. He wasn't holding a pistol. He was holding a submachine gun, and he was moving with the terrifying efficiency of a reaper. Rocco was right behind him. "Drop her!" Dante roared, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. Hale's guards panicked. One raised his weapon, but Dante was faster. 2 controlled bursts, thip, whip, thip, swip, and the guard crumpled to the floor. The second guard grabbed Sophia, using her as a human shield, pressing his gun to her temple. "Back off." The guard screamed, "I'll kill her." "I swear to God." Dante froze. He signaled Rocco to hold fire. The hallway fell into a tense, smoky silence. The fire alarm began to blare in the distance, a rhythmic strobe of light cutting through the gloom. Dante's eyes locked onto Sophia's. He didn't look scared. He looked focused. He gave her a microscopic nod. "Duck." Sophia didn't hesitate. She stomped her high heel down onto the guards, in step with all her strength, and threw her body weight downward. The guard howled in pain and reflexively loosened his grip. In that split second, Dante fired. The shot was impossible. A single round past Sophia's falling shoulder, striking the guard directly in the forehead. He dropped like a stone. Sophia hit the floor hard, scraping her knees. Professor Hale, seeing his muscle eliminated in under 10 seconds, turned and sprinted toward the loading dock exit. "Rocco, get Sophia!" Dante shouted, stepping over the fallen guard and sprinting after Hale. Rocco was at Sophia's side instantly, pulling her up. "Miss Richeye, are you hit?" "I'm fine," she gasped, kicking off her heels so she could run. "Go!" "Don't let him escape." They burst out onto the loading dock just in time to see a black SUV screeching away, tires smoking. Dante fired at the tires, but the vehicle was armored. It disappeared into the rainy New York night. Dante cursed, slamming his hand against the concrete wall. He turned back to Sophia. The adrenaline was still pumping through him, making his chest heave. He walked over to her, grabbing her face in his hands. His touch was rough, possessive. He checked her for injuries, his eyes scanning every inch of her face. "You," he growled, "are the most reckless, intelligent, infuriating woman I have ever met." I said the code word. She panted, her hands gripping the lapels of his tuxedo. "You waited until you had a gun to your head to say it," Dante yelled, though there was no anger in his eyes, only terrified relief. "I thought I lost you." He pulled her into him, crushing her against his chest. For a moment, the rain and the sirens didn't exist. There was only the smell of gunpowder and the frantic beating of their hearts. He got away. Sophia mumbled into his jacket. Not entirely. Dante pulled back, a dark smirk returning to his face. He held up a sleek silver flash drive. "What is that?" It fell out of Hale's pocket when he started running. Dante said he was so scared of dying. He dropped his life's work. Sophia looked at the drive, the ledger. "Let's go home," Dante said, guiding her toward his waiting car. "We have some reading to do." The atmosphere in the war room of the Aurelius Tower was suffocating. It was 3:00 a.m. Rain lashed against the floor toe-sailing windows. Dante, Rocco, and Sophia were gathered around the main monitor. The silver flash drive was plugged in. "It's encrypted," Rocco grunted, slamming his fist on the table. "AS-256-bit military grade. It would take a supercom. Put a 100 red years to brute force this." The screen showed a simple login prompt. No forgot password link, just a blinking cursor and a hint. The origin of the lie. Dante looked at Sophia. She was wrapped in a thick wool blanket, holding a mug of tea, staring at the screen. She had been staring at it for 20 minutes. "The origin of the lie," Dante repeated. "It's a riddle." "Hale is an academic," Sophia murmured, her mind drifting back to the lecture halls of Columbia. "He thinks he's smarter than everyone. He uses knowledge as a weapon." The origin of the lie in his class. He always taught that the first great financial lie wasn't a bond. It was a mistranslation. She stood up, shedding the blanket. She walked to the keyboard. He was obsessed with the Medici Bank, Sophia said, typing. Specifically, a ledger from 1492, where a zero was added to a balance sheet to hide a deficit. He called it the golden error. She typed golden error. Access denied. Damn, Sophia hissed. Think like him. Dante said, standing behind her, his hand resting on the back of her chair. He killed your father over a Sicilian bond. He tried to sell me a Sicilian bond. His obsession is Sicily. Sophia's eyes widened. The bond he showed you, the fake one, it had a date, October 14th, 1947. So Rocco asked. October 14th, 1947 isn't just a random date, Sophia said, her fingers hovering over the keys. It was the day the Regional Assembly of Sicily passed the vote on the special statute, the law that gave the island autonomy. But Hale always argued in his thesis that the vote was rigged. He called it the bastard statute. She typed it in Italian, lost statuto bastardo. Access denied, one attempt left. Rocco warned, if you get it wrong, the drive wipes itself. The room went dead silent. The pressure was physical. $150 million, the evidence of her father's murder and their lives, all hanging on one phrase. Sophia closed her eyes. She thought about Hale. She thought about his arrogance. She thought about the moment in the restaurant when she spotted the forgery. He used the wrong dialect, she whispered on the bond. He used a garanzia duty instead of pigurante duty. She opened her eyes. He didn't make a mistake. He did it on purpose. It was his signature, a hidden mockery of the people he was scamming. The password isn't the truth. The password is the lie itself. She typed the grammatically incorrect phrase from the fake bond. Agaron's duty. She hit enter. The screen flashed green. Access granted. Files began to cascade down the screen. Bank accounts in the Caymans, Senator Sterling's payoffs, blueprints for the fake bonds, and a folder named Loose Ends. Dante clicked on Loose Ends. A video file opened. It was grainy surveillance footage from 10 years ago. A house in Como. A man walking out of the front door, lighting a cigarette as flames engulfed the building behind him. The man turned to the camera. It was a younger Professor Hale. Sophia let out a choked sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Dante paused the video. He didn't need to see more. He placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder, squeezing hard. "We have him," Dante said, his voice cold as ice. "Rocco, send the financial files to the FBI anonymously. Destroy Senator Sterling and Hale," Rocco asked. Dante looked at the screen. He opened the most recent file. "Flight plan outgoing. He's not going to prison." Dante said he's trying to run. He has a private charter scheduled for 5:00 a.m. out of a private strip in Jersey. He's going to a non-extradition country. Dante turned to Sophia. "You stay here. You've done enough. You found the evidence. I'll handle the rest." Sophia stood up. She wiped the tears from her face. Her expression had changed. The scared student was gone. In her place was a woman who had walked through fire. "No," she said. Dante looked at her surprised. "Sophia, this is going to be violent. I'm not going to arrest him." "I know," she said. She walked over to the table where Rocco had laid out the weapons. She picked up a heavy pistol. She didn't hold it like a gangster. She held it like a heavy, dangerous tool she didn't want to touch, but had to use. "He killed my family," she said, looking Dante in the eye. "I've spent 10 years running from him. I'm not watching from a monitor while you end it. I'm coming with you." Dante stared at her. He saw the resolve in her jaw. He realized he couldn't stop her even if he wanted to, and God help him. He didn't want to stop her. He wanted her by his side. She was his equal, Rocco. Dante said, never leaving Sophia's gaze. Get her a vest. He walked over to Sophia and took the gun from her hand. He checked the chamber, engaged the safety, and handed it back. If you come, Dante said, you do exactly what I say. No heroics. We end this and we walk away together. Together, she repeated. Dante grabbed his coat. Let's go catch a plane. The airstrip in Teterboro was a desolate stretch of wet asphalt, illuminated only by the strobe lights of a waiting Gulfstream jet. The engines were already whining, a high-pitched scream cutting through the Preed, on mist. Dante's Maybach didn't just drive onto the tarmac. It invaded it. Rocco drove straight at the nose of the plane, swerving at the last second to block the runway, tires screeching. Before the car even stopped, Dante was out. The rain soaked him instantly, plastering his hair to his forehead. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at the plane's open staircase. Cut the engines, Dante roared. The pilot, seeing the heavy weaponry, didn't argue. The turbines winded down into silence. At the top of the stairs, Professor Hale appeared. He was holding a briefcase, the physical backup of his fortune. He looked down at Dante, and then he saw Sophia stepping out of the car behind him. She held the gun with two hands just like Dante had shown her. She wasn't shaking anymore. It's over, Hale. Sophia yelled over the wind. The FBI has the ledger. The senator is already in custody. You have nowhere to land. Hale stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at them like a king on a crumbling castle. He laughed, a manic, broken sound. You think I care about the senator? Hale shouted back. I have accounts in places the FBI can't even find on a map. You can't stop me, Sophia. I am the architect of this world. You are just a footnote. He reached into his jacket. Don't do it, Dante warned, his finger tightening on the trigger. Hale didn't pull a gun. He pulled a detonator. If I go, Hale smiled. The evidence goes with me. The plane is rigged. One click and this briefcase and the proof of who killed your father. Burns, he held his thumb over the button. Let me leave, Sophia, and you can keep your little romance. Stop me, and you lose the truth forever. Dante hesitated. He looked at Sophia. He knew how much that closure meant to her. He wouldn't take the shot if it meant destroying her peace. Sophia lowered her gun. She looked at the man who had haunted her nightmares for 10 years. She thought about the fire. She thought about the golden era. You're lying, Sophia said. Her voice was calm. Hale blinked. What? You're lying? She repeated, stepping forward. You're a narcissist, Professor. You spent 40 years building your reputation. You archived every scam, every dollar, every victory. You didn't rig the plane to blow up the evidence. You're too proud to destroy your own legacy. Hale's face twitched. She had read him perfectly. You aren't holding a detonator, Sophia said, raising her gun again. You're holding a garage door opener. Hale's bluff shattered. In a spasm of rage, he threw the fake detonator at them and reached for the real gun in his waistband. He was too slow. Dante didn't fire. Sophia did. Crack! The shot was wide. It hit the metal railing next to Hale's hand. Sparks flew. It wasn't a kill shot, but it terrified him. He stumbled back, tripping over his own feet, and tumbled down metal stairs, crashing onto the wet tarmac at Dante's feet. Dante stood over him, looking down with cold indifference. He kicked the gun away from Hale's reach. Hale groaned, clutching his bruised ribs. He looked up at Sophia, who was walking toward him. The student had become the master. Please, Hale wheezed. Sophia, I was just a middleman. I can give you names, bigger names. Sophia looked down at him. She saw a pathetic old man in a wet tuxedo. I don't need names, she said softly. I have the ledger. She turned to Dante. I'm done with him. Dante nodded. He grabbed Hale by the collar and dragged him toward Rocco, who was waiting with zip ties. The FBI will be here in 5 minutes. Dante said to Hale, You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell explaining how a waitress outsmarted you. Dante turned back to Sophia. The police sirens were wailing in the distance, getting louder. He walked up to her, taking the gun from her hand and tucking it into his belt. He cupped her face, wiping the rain from her cheeks. "You didn't kill him," Dante said, sounding impressed. "He's not worth the bullet," Sophia replied, "and besides, I have a thesis to finish." Dante laughed, a genuine warm sound that broke the tension of the night. He kissed her, fierce and claiming, right there on the runway, as the red and blue lights of the police cruisers flooded the scene. "Forget the thesis," Dante whispered against her lips. "I have a better job offer for you." "Does it involve waitressing?" she asked, smiling for the first time in days. "No," Dante said, taking her hand as they turned to face the authorities. "It involves running the empire." 6 months later, the Obsidian Room was packed. Table 9 was occupied, as always, by Dante Casero. But this time, he wasn't sitting across from a terrified banker. He was sitting across from Sophia. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a structured white blazer, her hair loose and glossy. She was reviewing a contract for a shipping merger in the Mediterranean. "The syntax in paragraph 4 is ambiguous," Sophia said, circling a clause with a gold fountain pen. "They're trying to hide a tariff loop. We reject it." Dante took a sip of his wine, watching her with unabashed pride. "You're ruthless, Mrs. Casero. I learned from the best," she winked. A waiter approached the table, a young man, nervous, trembling slightly as he held the water pitcher. He looked at Dante with fear. Sophia gently placed her hand over her glass. She looked at the young waiter and smiled warmly. "It's okay," she said. "Just breathe and watch the grammar on the specials board. You misspelled prosciutto." The waiter blinked, smiled back nervously, and poured the water. Dante reached across the table and took her hand. The waitress who knew too much had become the woman who ruled it all. And the best part, it was all completely real. And that is the story of how Sophia Richai, a waitress with nothing to lose, used a grammar lesson to take down a multi-million-dollar empire. It sounds like fiction, doesn't it? But in the world of high finance and organized crime, the smallest detail, a wrong stamp, a nervous stutter, or a dialect from 1947 can be the difference between a fortune and a funeral. Sophia proved that knowledge isn't just power, it's survival. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Mafia underworld, do me a favor, smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more stories like this. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a part. And I want to know, what is the one skill you have that could save your life in a high-stakes situation? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next story.